Peace, family. Peace, warriors. This is Dr. Sadiki Baye, the host of the Men's Room Talk Show. Coming to you every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Family, this is the place where you're going to hear the voices of our Black leaders, our Black men, our Black heads, providers, protectors, the ones who's doing positive things to hold the fort down in our community. Too often, the Black man get a bad rap. You know, he's either forgotten or taken for granted or even ignored. But this is the place where we're going to acknowledge our heads here, our leaders, the ones who's really doing what they need to do to fulfill their purpose. Once again, family, we have a special guest on today, and our elder, our warrior, the founder of the African American Museum in Atlantic City and in Dr. Martin Luther King Community Center in Newtonville, New Jersey. It's an honor and a privilege to have our elder on the Men's Room Talk Show. He is a wonderful warrior, and he's very knowledgeable. He's a historian, a curator, and amongst other things, just a list goes on and on. That is really, I just can't say it enough. It's an honor and a privilege to have our warrior, our example, our leader, our teacher, our example, the honorable elder warrior from Atlantic.
Hi there, Doc. How are you today? It's been my pleasure to have the opportunity to meet with you and your team, as well as your studio audience watching around the world.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, brother, more than you know. Can you share with the listening audience this, let's acknowledge this brother and support this brother, because he's gone beyond as far as I'm concerned. He's always busy and doing things and making sure that everything is in divine order. So, Elder Hunter, Can you share with us, a little bit about where you come from and what led you to become and get involved in what you are today?
Well, like Will Smith said, born and raised in West Philly, up the top, up around 60th Street. Went to Brooks Elementary School, Shoemaker Junior High, Overbrook High School. Had a great time growing up in West Philly. Hung out at Haddington Recreation Center. Had times in Fairmount Park throughout my life. There's a little local park that we went to. It was called Carroll's Park, right there, 59th and Girard Avenue, where we would gather and play our little games and have our fun. But West Philly was dear to my heart. But the beautiful part about growing up in Philly, I was privileged to have the opportunity to understand the importance of history. And history was pretty important because I remember as in junior high school, going down to the Philadelphia Museum of History and Culture, going to the different looks throughout the city to see art and galleries. Growing up, it was really, really touched my heart in such a way that I said to myself one day, I'm going to have a house full of goodies, all kinds of beautiful black goodies. And I've been blessed to be able to do that. I was a collector, I guess about 45, 46 years ago. I had traveled to down south. I had taken a 5-year sabbatical looking for African American. And I'd gotten down to North Carolina and I'd gone into an antique store. And when arriving there, I asked the clerk, did she have anything that was black or African? Purchase it. And she's looking around, she's finding, so I remember me putting because they were out, they didn't want to offend any of the customers. And I said, well, whatever it is, I'll buy it. So at that time, I was in the hunt to try and find about the very first item I purchased. So raising up in Philly, a lot of the teachers that we had were not people of color. And I remember quite vividly growing up and being in the kindergarten in Westlake, and 90% of the class, which was Caucasian, and the nation should read. I was very much offended by that story. Graham Cracker time, I became their little black Sambo. So it offended me to no end, and I was really, really touched by that. Lo and behold, I get down to North Carolina about 45 years ago and going to this antique shop. And the lady comes out of the back room with this thing that she was not able to put out because they didn't want to offend anyone. It was a book called Little Black Sambo. Now I'm regressing again, being 5 years old, 4.5 years old, being in kindergarten, and the kids thinking of a black person as Little Black Sambo. So I started not to buy the book, but I said to myself, I'm going to buy this book and get it off the market. So, so I don't know if anyone's ever heard the story of Little Black Sambo. I can repeat it in my sleep, and sometimes I dream about it. Not because I just own lots of copies of it, first editions. The story was written by a lady by the name of Helen Bannerman, and she had written the story while traveling on a train to India for 2 girls. And the story was about this little black boy who mother makes him a new jacket, new pair of pants, 2 pair of slippers, and has his dad's umbrella. And he asked his mother, could he go out into the jungle? I don't remember too many jungles around West Philly. We had Fairmount Park, no jungle. and what would then happen was that he was able to be in a position to say to himself, well, Ralph, why would you want to buy this book? I said, well, buy the book, get it off the market. So the story goes and talks about him walking through the jungle, and the tigers come out after him. One grabs his jacket and puts it on his hind legs. Another grabs his trousers and puts it on the front 2 legs. Another grabs another garment, which were his slippers, and puts those on his ears. And the last tiger grabs his umbrella that his father had left at home, and he puts it on his tails. And he says, well, I'm the most handsome tigers in the jungles. And they start prancing through the jungles, going around and around and around and around. And all of a sudden, they decided to take off all little Black Sambo's clothing and put it alongside the tree and start chasing each other around one tree in particular. So they went around this tree so fast, faster and faster and faster, and they went around so fast they started to melt, and they turned into a big mound of something yellow that one would put on one's pancakes or waffles or French toast. So there this mound of butter was. Old Black Sambo sees that the tigers had melted and turned into butter. He gathers his clothing, runs home, and tells his mother what had happened. Along through the jungle comes his dad, has his urn on top of his head. And he takes the urn and he sees the mound of butter. He gathers together, gets home, and asks his son what kind of a day he had. Said he had a terrible day out there, that they all attacked him and they were going to bother him, eat up his food. So, well, what would you like to eat? Well, Black Sambo says, well, I could like to eat pancakes today. So he eats 100 pancakes. Father eats like 81. Mother eats like 32 pancakes. So the moral of the story is, and how I like to lead in when I'm doing a special program such as this, is to be able to tell the story from its inception, to let folks know how the museum got started. And that was the very first item that I purchased for the museum. On that 5-year trip, I was able to purchase about 3,000 pieces. I spent all of my children's inheritance on Black memorabilia. It was a great time for me. The kids all did well, and they really didn't need it. So that's the story about Little Black Sambo. So then I asked a question of people I'm telling the story to. When they were growing up as kids, sometimes their parents would make pancakes, waffles, or French toast for them. Then I would ask them, what kind of syrup do they put in their pancakes? And 90% of the people would answer this by saying, and your mama. And then jokingly, I would say, I and your mama's at home. Oh, and just go crazy laughing. It's really, really fun. Well, that's how the museum got started. And that's what got me started collecting and falling in love with African-American memorabilia. But the real reason I bought it to get it off the market. So I said to myself when I was walking out of that antique store that I'm going to buy every Little Black Sambo book I can for the next 5 years, and have a big bonfire and burn them all up. That was my intention. But it went on to become the collection that now is housed at the African American Heritage Museum in Atlantic City at Noyes Art Garage, which is a subsidiary of Stockton University, and in our other locations in the town, an African American town over in New Jersey. It's the upper part of Atlantic County. It's called Buena Vista Township, and there's an African American community there. It's been around for a long time, and that's called Newtonville, New Jersey. And there we have a lovely museum. Right now, we have a great exhibit. And it's called Thank You for Your Service. And Thank You for Your Service talks about the Tuskegee Airmen, the Black Cowboys, all the soldiers who fought in all the wars, as well as the Coast Guard. It's just an amazing exhibit. And that exhibit will be up until the beginning of February in that location. And in our location in Atlantic City, we have an exhibit. It's called The North Side. I don't know if you look at listening audience ever saw a program called Boardwalk Empire. I was a consultant for that series. I think we got 19 Emmy Awards for that particular series. It was quite compelling story. And it told the history of 2 Atlantic cities. One part of Atlantic City was pretty much a plantation. It was an area where it was redlined, where African Americans were forced to live. And there were redlined communities all over these United States of America. So when our forefathers left the Deep South, coming north to be part of the Industrial Revolution, they would land in these different cities, whether it was the South Side of Chicago, it was Gary, Indiana, or it was Newark or Harlem, New York. There was areas and pockets of people coming from the Deep South, coming out of the cotton fields or coming out of tobacco fields or even the farmland, to come here to be part of the Industrial Revolution. And that was the big wave that came north. But once they arrived here, they were forced And so many of those communities were on the other side of the tracks. And on the other side of the tracks is where they pronounced these communities to be the African American communities. And they didn't do well from the beginning. But after the first 15 or 20 years, these communities started to become really, really explosive in such a way that people in those areas were in a position to start opening up their own businesses. You got to think back that the first set of entrepreneurs in the North were women, females, and they came north, and it was a lady by the name of Madam Sarah Spencer Washington, who owned a company called Apex Hair Care Products. And in her company, she taught the first wave of African American women how to become entrepreneurs. And it was really, really a great time because she had schools in Baltimore, Washington, Chicago, all over the East Coast, where she taught those women how to open up your own business, buy my product, and could make a proprietor of your own business. So that was part of the redlining things that went exceedingly well. There were towns throughout New Jersey, as we're local, a town called Lawnside, New Jersey. It was a town incorporated by African Americans, and it's still incorporated today by African Americans. It's really, really amazing. We go through South Jersey. There were towns called Lawnside. There was Chislehurst. There were towns up and down the corridor. And that's pretty much how Atlantic City got built and how Atlantic City was able to have all of these little African American towns all the way from Philadelphia down to the shore, because Atlantic City was built on the backs of African Americans. And so what would happen, they would not travel all the way back to Philadelphia when they were building the railroad or building Route 30 to get to the shore. And so what would happen, they'd stop off at these different towns. Atco was a town. There were little towns throughout the whole area, all the way down to the shore, where the African American communities would stop and keep going from there. And eventually they went to Atlantic City and they built that town. They built its railroad, its boardwalk, its beaches, its hotels. Everything was built on the backs of people who look just like me. It's pretty amazing to be able to gather all this information, put this history together in such a way that we built a new exhibit. And the new exhibit we have, it's called the North Side. And it tells that all communities around the East Coast and up north that have strong African American communities back in the 20s and 30s, but they don't exist today.
Excuse me, Elder, can you turn your picture back on?
I do that.
How does
Okay. The left hand.
It says low power mode, and then it says close, and it says
No. Listen, just go to the bottom left hand corner of your screen. Next to the microphone, there's a camera. It has a red line through it. You need to click that.
Okay, I'm not seeing that.
Okay. It's in the bottom left hand corner.
Bottom left. Okay, we're not getting it.
It's a picture of a camera. You just touch
No, it's all black. The screen is black. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Don't worry about the screen. Do me a favor and put your cursor all the way to the bottom left hand side of your screen. Or you put your finger there at the bottom left hand side of your.
I'm touching it as we speak.
Okay.
And
You don't see a mic camera?
No, I don't. Okay. I told you I was. Oh man. Okay.
Don't just be calm and there you go. You got it.
We got it.
Yeah,
You got
it. There you go. See, we're gonna make you a tech man also.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you can continue about the Atlantic City building of the railroads and the
Okay, I had started to try to say that the town was built on the backs of people who look like me. There was a group of people who came down to build the railroad. The railroad, it was called the Camden Line, and it came from Camden into Atlantic City. And its first group of people who came to Atlantic City didn't come in an automobile. They came on the big iron horse, which of course was the railroad. And that railroad had to get built. So African Americans were a large part. The conductors on that railroad who built that track to come all the way down. That track is still in existence today. It's been replaced a couple of times, but that path where that track ran is still the pathway to Atlantic City today.
Wow. Can you explain or share after our people built businesses and entertainment centers and so forth and so on, did the white folks come to the area, or they were still separate?
Well, it was Jim Crow laws back in those days. It was called separate but equal. Let's say Atlantic City had two different towns. One was the south side of town, the other was the north side of town. The south side of town is where the hotels were. That's where the ocean was. That's where the beaches were. The north side of town was at least four, maybe 2.5 blocks back from the ocean. It would be the ocean, then it would be Pacific Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. And Atlantic Avenue was the separating part of the north and south side of the city. And the African Americans lived from Connecticut Avenue down to Arkansas Avenue. So that was an area where some 30,000 people of color were forced to live because that area was deemed red line. But there are red line areas like that all over the United States of America. And then the same thing took place there, where in Atlantic City, in particular, there were some 13 African American doctors on the north side of Atlantic City serving some 30,000 residents of the city, because these people all worked in the hotels, they worked in the restaurants, and they worked on the railroad, they worked in the hotels and throughout the area. But if those folks were not there, the city would have never survived, because the people who could afford to come to the town were people who were much more fortunate than the people that were working there. So the African Americans were able to build their own community called the North Side. And not only did they have 13 black doctors, they had 7 millionaires. They had some 34 guest houses that had a liquor license in them. They had hotels, restaurants, and of course the great beauty parlors throughout the city, from places like dry cleaners to ice houses, you name it, whatever it took to make a town run on the north side. But the beautiful part about that, those dollars actually stayed there. Today, what happens, if the money's earned in a section of a city, it doesn't stay there because it leaves town. Because the people come to town who make the money, they don't come back and live there anymore. So those dollars are dollars. So it's historians would explain to you. And if you had more time one-on-one, I could sit down and talk to your group at maybe at a different time and explain the economics of being self-contained. Self-contained is a great thing, and I really, really love my forefathers who came together to put that system together. Because a town like Atlantic City was bigger than the great things that were happening out in the West. People talk about what happened and when they had their great towns where they had the stock market, Black Wall Street, and things of that nature. But Atlantic City was almost 4 times the size of Black Wall Street, because it had so many millionaires, and it was located on the East Coast, not more than 100 miles from 125 miles from Washington, 120 miles from New York, 60 miles from Philadelphia. and all those areas were around Atlantic City, and it was called a world's playground. So people came from all over the country to come to Atlantic City to go to places like the Steel Pier. But more importantly than the Steel Pier, there was a place called the Club Harlem. Club Harlem in Atlantic City was a pretty important area because there was a street there with nightclubs and bars and restaurants and hotels on it. It was really second to none. And when the African Americans who came there to play, they couldn't get a gig over at one of the hotels because those hotels wouldn't permit Black entertainers to come in. So when the white entertainers wanted to see Pearl Bailey or Count Basie or one of those great luminaries in the entertainment fields, they would have to come over to the north side. And they brought those dollars over to the north side, and those dollars stayed on the north side. They didn't have to go back to the south side. I heard a little bell ring. I don't know what that was.
That's people coming on.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's kind of how you envision what took place. And of course, Atlantic City once again had African Americans could go to any beach at all in Atlantic City, and they were quite welcomed until 1927. And what happened then was the city fathers got together because they got complaints from the hotel owners who own the hotels up and down the boardwalk, and they complained that their guests weren't coming back to Atlantic City anymore because there were Black people in front of the hotels. They weren't going to come back anymore. And so right away they had a meeting they held it right outside of Atlantic City in a little small town called Galloway Township. And at that meeting, they decided let's remove all the Black people from all the beaches in Atlantic City. Let's force them to go to the beach in front of the Boardwalk Hall. Boardwalk Hall is owned and operated by the city, so the city could then declare that area a safe place for Blacks to go. And that beach Fannie Lou Hamer stood in front of that beach. It was just an amazing place to have come to seeing what was happening in Atlantic City. There would be tens of thousands of people would come here every week to support the nightlife, to support the restaurants as well as the hotels. It was truly, truly a mecca of entertainment, of lifestyle, and of the restaurants as well as the hotels did an outstanding job. And it was part of the Green Book. Anyone who goes back, Atlantic City had an area of some 34 stops on the Green Book, and it went up to almost 65 points at the end. It's really, really was an amazing time. So when I first got off that bus and came to Atlantic City and saw all of those folks who looked like me that had their own businesses, there was a black police department, there was a white police department, there was a black fire station, there were white fire stations, but in the red line area, they had a station that was Black. They had a police department that was Black who surveyed and took care of the folks on the north side of town.
Wow, family. I hope you are hearing all of this very valuable information about Atlantic City, because we've been duped into this thing that, white folks is, Atlantic City equals white. We already know that, Frank Sinatra and all of them know who the real entertainers are. They knew who are the real people, hospitality, and so forth and so on, respectful people. So before we go into the break, Elder, can you share with us a little about, what is it, the chilling circuit?
Oh yeah, well, that was part of the entertainment. Yeah, well, what took place was when when Sammy and Duke and Pearl and Lena would come to Atlantic City, they would come in the summertime. It was like a 14 weeks, the summer season, from the first week in last week in June until the end of Labor Day. They would come to Atlantic City. They would come in droves, thousands and thousands of people would come down. So they couldn't get that gig over in the south side of town, so they would come to the Club Harlem. They go to places like Daddy Lou's. They go places like the Top Hat, the High Hat, the Silk Hat, Perry's Bar. I can name them off by the hundreds. It was really, really, that's where it comes for the entertainment. So the children's circuit was that if they came into the city and they got booked in town, they would play with the north side. So the people from the south side of town would come over to the Club Harlem, to Grace's Belmont, to Wonder Gardens, or any of the other bars over Atlantic, the other side of Atlantic Avenue, and come and visit these great entertainers. So just think for 1 second, if you wanted to see a great act and you're staying at one of the big white hotels on the south side, they wouldn't book them. So the only place they'd get booked was on the north side. So they would have busloads of people load up at the hotels, and they'd bring them over to Kentucky Avenue. They'd get out of the bus on Atlantic Avenue, and they'd get in line, and they'd come into the Club Harlem. They had a show there. It was called The Breakfast Show. The Breakfast Show was pretty exciting. It was at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. So guys like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and those guys, once the 500 Club closed, and the Jockey Club, and the Paddock Club closed on the south side, they would come over and jam over at the Club Harlem. And then that's how it got its power, and that's how it received its base. And that was part of the Chitlin Circuit. So the Chitlin Circuit means that I can't play in Detroit this week. It's summertime. We're going to go to Atlantic City, and we're going to jam in Atlantic City. So those guys who played the Chitlin Circuit came here for that summer period. And after that, they went back to St. Louis. They went to Gary. They went to Chicago. They went to New York. They went pretty much all over. But the Club Harlem was bigger than the Cotton Club in New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Man, see, I heard a lot of stuff, man, I was not aware of. I'm sure the listening audience wasn't aware of a lot of that, but we need to hear these things from our people, because we're going to tell the real truth about your picture went off against Elder, but I really appreciate you sharing all of that, and you're a true historian, and you're making us aware of some things that our people, and there you go, you got it.
Yeah, I have a look back. I think it's what's happening. I didn't check.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that goes to show you that we can even call that what they had and wait a minute, where we had wealth and everything all across the country.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
We didn't.
Right.
Be all over the place, man. They just want to highlight one place.
Yes. It was right here on the East Coast.
Yes, sir. And I really appreciate you sharing all of that. Time is going fast, and get you on your end. We're going to take a special break where I share with you some raw food for thought to help stimulate, motivate your mind to go to another level. See, this is what we call transformation. And in transformation, as you know, you have to be willing to go into areas that you've never been in your mind in order to go to another level. But too many of us are fighting to stay the same, feeling that I don't have to change. I know enough already, or I finally made it. Okay, keep in mind, family, that it's easier to get there than to stay there.
Shout hallelujah.
Because maintaining is all what it's all about. So we have to, in other words, family, we have to be willing intentionally. And I've said this many times, we have to be willing intentionally to prepare ourselves, because preparation is the key to everything. We have to intentionally and be willing to prepare ourselves to be challenged. You have to be willing to do that. Prepare yourself to be challenged so no one can catch you off guard. We understand they're going to these schools to make us fools. We understand that on these jobs and some of these religions and so forth, who's misleading, misguiding, misdirecting us. So that's why everything is personal. We have to study to show ourselves approval, and that's why I love the Elder Raphael Hunter Sr. for blessing me to even be in his presence. Really. I mean, I've always looked up to the elders. I'm from the South. I've always honored and loved the elders. Nothing but deep respect. And I appreciate and I honor those kind of people because that gives me a reason to even strive bigger, because they already have some things going that I don't know nothing about. But it's a motivation to me, because sometimes the road seems kind of lonely. But when I meet warriors like motivation is more to keep going, no matter how things seem. Because guess what? Everything is in divine order, no matter how it seems. And all challenges are nothing but opportunities to go to another level. So embrace the challenge. Embrace it. It might be a little painful or hurting or uncomfortable, but guess what? You can't beat the blessings. You're blessed through your efforts. No efforts, no blessings. A little effort, a little blessings. Medium efforts, medium blessings. A lot of effort, a lot of blessings. That's life, family. We have to understand this thing that we are in life. Not from an emotional point of view, but from an understanding point of view. But first, you have to know something. In order to know something, you got to first think. Thinking, knowing, and understanding. Because if I know something, I don't have to think about it. So that tells me that thinking is the process to get you to knowing. Everything is based on process. And the process that we should be coming from is a frame of reference of our energy. So you won't be vibing off of emotions, fooling yourself to believe that, hey, I feel better, I must be better. But don't forget, feelings come and go like the weather. But one thing about a wise man, he goes by what he knows. And keep in mind, as I always said too, that man means mind, a thinker. All males are not men, and all women are not, and all females are not women. We have to qualify ourselves. That's why we had the passage. You had to qualify yourself to pass through the rites of passage. But what do they tell us? You're 21 and you're a man. Don't be deceived by somebody else's standards. We are lions. We are not house cats, even though both of them are cats. We are eagles. We are not chickens, even though both of them are birds. Family, we are the original people, and there's nothing greater than the original. A lot of things have happened to us, and they flipped us upside down, inside out. But we got to work hard and smart together to reclaim our godhood. Because if we're the children of God, then what does that tell you? Is that what Jesus and all of them were saying? When you see me, you see the Father, for I and the Father are one. Things I do, greater things you can do. So we must embrace that family. That's coming from an ancestor, little characters in these whole experiences that's the cause and effect, the laws of cause and effect. Because all of that is correlated. Where we are, family, all of that wasn't our fault. But guess what? Go for it, family. I encourage you to go over and beyond the requirements of this system, this capitalistic system. Many different agencies and many kind of things that, like these schools, even sometimes people are so religious they forgot to be spiritual. They got in the first grade study to show ourselves approvable, to go to the next level. That's what y'all, the power mission. We have to elevate. We got to tune it up. Tune it up, family, and be grounded. Because if the electricity is not grounded, it can click on and off as it pleases. So, family, this is something that we have to transform into our hell that they went through is not in vain. And that's why I appreciate the elder who is our main guest today. And with that in mind, family, we're going to go back. Introduce him to Mr. Ralph E. Hunter Sr., the founder of the African American Museum in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and in Newtonville, New Jersey.
Okay, you got me back again. I'm here and I'm smiling. I'm happy. I'm delighted to have this wonderful opportunity to spend with your audience today. It just makes my heart feel good knowing that there's some folks out there who want to visit location or in the Newtonville, or either have us come to your location. Our traveling museum travels to schools, universities, churches, large groups. So we set up a traveling museum right in your location. And it's pretty cost effective for you to do that because you don't have to load up 5 bus loads and come either to Newtonville or to Atlantic City. We can come to you. So I get to about 100 schools, university, and church groups every January and February. So we're servicing Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and New York. So we're available for you. All you have to do is go to our webpage. It's at aahmsnj.org, and you can find out about it. And today happens to be Giving Tuesday, so I'm reach out to you, and if you're not the organization you'd like to donate for the close of it, I'd like you to make a donation or represent some organization that's done well in your community. It doesn't have to be us. If it is us, that's okay. But this is Giving Tuesday, and see it in your heart of hearts to try to reach out to some organization. If it's a soup kitchen, if it's a battered women, or a drug rehab house, or a church, whatever you choose to help out on Giving Tuesday, I think you owe it to yourself and to your ancestors. So let's make that happen before midnight tonight.
All right.
We really appreciate our family. You can turn on your mics and show the elders some love. You know, you can ask some questions, observations, comments. Let's show the elders some love so that we can definitely show him that we really appreciate him in spite of all the hell that he went through and all the hell that all of us going through. So the elder, he is really proving himself to fulfill his purpose. And I really look up to the elder and motivation level. Family, we say this, we don't have to get permission. This is our show. This is an opportunity to communicate so we can get that respect and that trust in one another once again. So who wants to go down and show the elders some love? Even
Hi,
if,
Mr. Ralph.
Yes, my sister.
what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Terry. I'm from Atlantic City, but I live in Atlanta, Georgia now. And I chimed in right when you start talking about Chicken Bone Beach. And we every year, I mean, we had loads of family that came to. It saddens me to see that beach is just not even the same anymore, but it saddens me even more that Kentucky Avenue looks the way it does. My grandfather came down just about every weekend. He was a drummer at Club Harlem. And I've been trying to get pictures of him. He's from Philly. His name was Johnny Williams. And he would come down every weekend sharp as a tack. Oh my God. And at the Club Harlem. I'm 60 years old. My mom took me to a play there when I was about 14 or 15 years old. But it just saddens me to see that street. I mean, that was the pride of Atlantic City for Black people.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you so much for bringing those memories back.
Me and reach out to me, and maybe we can find some information about your family playing Club Harlem. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ralph. Thank you for all that you guys are doing. This is just amazing. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate you too. Yes. Thank you for your comments. Bringing back memory. And your school, most of them, the whole journey there in Atlantic City, that if it wasn't for us, there'd be no Atlantic City, really. None of that stuff going on. You know, matter of fact, all across the country. Yes. So who else want to show the elders some love? You know, and
try to get on quick because I'm not ready to go. And I don't know how to hook it up.
Okay, let's make it short and sweet, family. Whoever, quickly. Even Queen Mother, if you want to.
This is Harry Peterson, Philadelphia, and I want to compliment our warrior on the massive collection of memorabilia he has in both museums. I've seen both of them, and it's astounding. And it amazes me. I go to the city every year, and I never knew that there was a history museum, and he lived in Atlanta. So I am by
Billie Holiday.
Today,
Billie Holiday. And I was told it was one of the first gas stoves. How did you come about that piece?
Well, a guy from Club Harlem had it. His name was Chris Colombo. He had stored it. He had gotten it from Billy up and brought it to Atlantic City. And he had it stored in someone's basement. And that person was ready to go to nursing home. And I found out it was there. And I got myself a truck from somebody. And 4 guys went over there and hauled it up out of the crawl space. And we cleaned it and
In the museum in Atlanta. And it just brought, you just make me feel so warm to see that again, you know. But it was just amazing that you of the journey we've been on. I mean, it's just amazing what we have well we're doing right now. And we're doing that because of the selecting all these things. It's absolutely amazing. Right, yes. So I like to urge everyone to send him a donation because he has these 2 museums that he's running, and it's a lot. It's a lot, but they are so magnificent. The quality of his pieces is just splendid. He has dolls. He has a collection of banks, which are cast iron banks, and some of them on video. One is I can't remember, alligator eating a black baby. I mean, things like that was depicted about our lives when we were enslaved. So I think for him to have gotten all these pieces and all these wonderful treasures is just astounding. It's absolutely astounding. Really, it said about what America and some of that they continue to think of, which we see in the presence of the political system that we're dealing with right now. Those attitudes were fed by that history that was alike and that was abusive and that took advantage of our labor. And I think we must children see that, take them to these museums and let them see that. It's very that we see that large Aunt Jemima collection, which I haven't seen that large collection for a long time. And there were just so many wonderful.
Tell them about the original Aunt Jemima.
Oh, this was interesting, which I did not know. He has a slide. He has what do you call it?
Yeah.
They had that he with some works of his and some of his staff members that's out in and, and uh, and amazing. Oh, and one other point. that I found out was that in Atlantic City, you have the beauty contests every year. I don't know why, but she was in one of those contests, and they have a picture of her when she was in one of the pageants there. She didn't win, but she was in that. And I thought that was really interesting. Look, and if you let him know ahead of time, he'll be there to meet you. But his staff is well able to do, an excellent job in explaining everything. I mean, uh, Tuskegee Airmen, we met a couple of
Um,
with that when they burned down that section
yeah,
of Atlantic City, of Philadelphia.
the move people. Yeah, yeah, God. To get on the show, we had talked, and he said definitely he wants to be on the show because he was definitely displeased with this whole because of what went on up here. All of our black children and all that were killed. If there was anybody else, man, I'm telling you, there'd be no end to raising hell. Because you do a white or a child wrong,
Right.
and you're here forever. And all we do is march and go home, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
We got to do better. We got to do better than we got to make a point. Freedom not given.
Right. Uh, you're right. How the the irons that we use to iron our clothes, some of the first models are old cast iron irons, the egg beaters, and some of them so strange to look at them because when was the last time we used an egg beater? Huh? It's
that.
Yeah. I think
And
one of the
we
things,
keep on pointing their finger, talking about keep blaming them. Come on, children, didn't they say all children are foolish?
one of the how well dressed how people were,
Mhm.
and knowing that and they had some idea. Oh, Ted said that the talk about that, Terry. You
I was told now that ah
Madam, I
C.J.
can't.
Walker. Was it C.J.
No,
Walker?
no, it was another one.
no. But, but he said that she said she taught people and she had
Yes.
schools.
It's an easy person to get to know. That's what I
Mhm.
absolutely. So we have to do what we can.
Support. He needs
Yeah.
our support. We need each other to support each other. It's
Yeah.
almost like we have to be our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper.
Uh-huh.
We used to be that way, but we stepped off from it with attitude. I ain't gonna raise my children like I was raised because I didn't like that. So, but we went too far with it, and then we lost complete
Yeah.
control.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
mm.
we got to go back and get it. Sometimes you got to go back and get it.
Right. Well, this is a great place to go back and get all the information about our history. And I've been so fascinated by Atlantic City and her contribution to that city and how well Black people lived back then.
Mhm.
You know, they were really
Please
very
visit
well.
these museums when you go to that. Please do that. As a matter of fact, when you first enter Atlantic City, once you pass you in Atlantic City, look at the signs once you get to be just before you get to Atlantic Avenue. On the right-hand side, it says African American Museum. A lot of people miss it because they're so busy wanting to go to casinos. I got to lose my money because everything you win, you're gonna give it back. Right? So, you know, so we have to be intentional. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you this story too. I asked people in that area, where is the African American Museum? About no one knew. They're right across the street from it. But we have to understand that the African American Museum is in Stockton University. Inside Stockton University in the back. But it's the most important section of that whole building.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm telling you all that. And I had to meet up with the elder. You know what I mean? He was silent, and that's how we got together.
Mhm. It was
You know,
really,
check out his energy.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So I thank everybody, and you know, there was a great journey, and it's an honor and a privilege to present the elder and his journey, so that we can contribute to him sticking around by being acknowledged. Acknowledgement can cause a person to want to stick around.
Yeah.
And we
And
must acknowledge each other while we are able.
Mhm. Yeah, what because I get so tired of every state all over this country, our black men. Because if we
Yes.
don't, if we allow the white society to take our men away from us, who's going to
Mm,
protect us? Who's going to
that's
protect
right.
our culture?
We're going to
Now
protect
we
the
have,
children.
and our children, our families. But one of the things that is very, very prominent in my mind, because I was raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and all I saw were strong black men.
Mhm.
They were wonderful. I don't know of anyone. As a matter of fact, my uncle had to leave town because he beat up some white person. They my family said, "You got to get out of town
Mm,
before
well,
you get beat up, before they lock you up or whatever." But I just never ever. I don't have any memory of any weak black men in the South. So when people, and one of the books that I wrote, Buttermilk Bottom, I wrote that to show how black men cope with that system of
yes.
oppression,
Mhm.
because they were clever, they were smart, they
Mhm.
did things undercover. Like, you won't give me a
Mhm.
job? Well, guess what? I'm going to make,
Yes.
and they took care of their families. I did not know a family who didn't have a father figure in their home. So it's
Mhm.
very, very important that we let our children know and also support our men so they know that they're the greatest thing on this planet and
Yes.
they're the strongest. God chose that black man first. So who we cannot allow the society we live in to denigrate our men. We cannot allow that. And they're taking our boys like, and our men, and now they're taking our girls. They're locking children up at age 14, well, 14, 13, 14. And they even had some children from elementary school that were arrested in handcuffs. Who does this?
In kindergarten, mind you.
Yeah, yeah. And when did it start that schools called the police instead of calling a parent?
Mhm.
I mean, that should be outlawed. Call the parent. You have no business calling the police on any child. It's
Can I
ridiculous.
can I interject something? We
Yes,
have
sir.
to understand the real purpose of school. The real purpose of school, where it was created, is supposed to be an extension of the community. These schools are not an extension of us, they're an extension of somebody else. So
Okay, well,
we cannot expect them to tell us who we are. Because if they tell us who we are, they have to expose themselves. And they're not going for that.
okay, well,
So
one historical point I want to make here, because I love history, and this is one of the points. The school system that we have was started by Black people, because we started training our kids as soon as slavery was over. And this is one of the things that that keeps being laid aside. After they saw that we were getting good educations, then they took over that system. But that was another theft of our culture. So that's one of the reasons we have to know who we are, know where we came from, and study our history. It's all written down. It's all
Mhm.
written down. And
uh,
then they told themselves because they wrote it in books.
hey, I went to Charles Houston elementary school. Look up Charles Houston. was Thurgood Marshall,
Okay.
mentor.
Mhm.
So we know a lot of these things. We know names, but we don't have a clue on what comes behind those names. Don't forget, name means nature. So we have to look at the nature that's behind that name.
Mhm.
Don't feel that they tell us. We shouldn't even depend on a chicken to teach us that we're eagles. Are you for real? When eagles eat chickens? Come
Mhm.
on now. We
Yeah.
got to do better. What's better than better? Better. There's always room for improvement. But a lot of people think, oh, I got a good job and there's no such thing as a good job when you encounter society and there's nothing, plantations. No such thing as a good job. That's why they say God bless the child that got his own. First of
That's
all,
what.
got his own mind.
And that's why it's so important that we support Black businesses, because that money should, any money we spend should bounce these times before we get our hands on it. We have to learn of success.
The
And
power of economics.
yes, exactly. And that's something that people knew back then when they had all these Wall Streets all over the country. And that was like taken away from us because we were intimidated and blown out of the water. They start systematically taking loans away from us. They took properties, tore down properties, and that did a highway through it. So
Mm.
we just have to be more caring of each other, so we know where we're going, where we have to go, in order for our children to be freer, and on top of their game.
So we
It's
have to come frame of reference. The frame
yes,
of reference are the ones before us. But too many people finding fault in the ones before us. And that's why we became rebellious, and all hell broke loose some more. Because when you read the book of Genesis, when they turned their backs on their forefathers, that's when all hell broke loose. And we are continuously doing that. We have no respect. We got to gain more respect for one another. We talk a lot of love stuff, and that's why Tina Turner say, what love got to do with when you don't respect me? Respect is always the foundation to all relationships.
exactly.
Stronger your respect is, the more you can build on it.
Mhm.
And then you can get to the love part. Because I never heard love until I was grown. Because all we talked about down south was respect. And so we represented respect. We didn't pick and choose. That's what we represented. And you better. One thing about community is the structure. Children have no choice other than what the parents give them.
Mhm.
But now the children are all over the place because they don't feel connected. And that's not their fault.
Right.
That's us before them. We took that for granted. And look at the results of it and we blame them. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
They should know better. How should they know better when they never taught better?
Right. Well, I want to thank you, and we have to send a warm thank you to Mr. Hunter for being on the show today, because it was one of the best. I really love that information, and it just drips from his lips like water. It's
Yeah.
really great that he has internalized our history so much. So I
Yes.
thank you, Dr. Sadiki, and my darling Terry. Thank you for contributing. That was wonderful. Um, to hear you grew up in Atlantic City. Isn't that fantastic? And I will look up that lighthouse information. I will look
Yes.
that up. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you to the listening audience. Thank you, each and every one of you, for participating. And I know that it pleased our warrior and our elder, Ralphie Hunter Sr., for us participating, to give him a reason to continue on and to be our warrior, our leader, our pace setter, our rhythm, our frequency, and fulfilling his purpose. So he is a true example of a real man.
Yes.
And I thank the Creator for him. I thank the ancestors for him.
Mm-hmm.
So with
Yeah.
that in mind, family, we got to keep in mind to continue to stay strong, and keep your faith where it belongs. Life is for the living. Let's continue to live and not just exist. Also, do your best and let God do the rest. You got to know when to hold and know when to fold. How do you know when to hold and when to fold? You have to have a sharp discerning spirit to know the difference. Because one thing about a fool sees everything the same. And a fool is a child. So a fool is not an age. It's a child is not an age, a child is a mentality. So also keep your lights on and keep them bright at all times. Don't put an on and off light switch. Put a dimmer on. You can always turn it up. You can always turn it down, but it's always on as long as you're in charge. Right thinking, right giving, and right eating is holistic living. Let me say that again. Right thinking, right giving, and right eating is holistic living.
Amen.
Let's get back to our original way of life, family, and live, and live, and live. This is Dr. Sadiki Baye, your servant and host of the Men's Talk Show. Have a blessed evening. Have a blessed life. And have a happy new journey. Peace, Hotep, Baraka, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum. All of it means peace, and we are peace. Thank you. See you next Tuesday.